Holden Made.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Holden Made Podcast. I'm Jeremy Holden, your host for the Holden Made Podcast. This is a podcast about creativity, about creative processes, and anything else that piques my interest. I look forward to interviewing people about their careers, about their creativity, and about their lives in general. On today's episode, we welcome photographer Elena Kulikova and her special guest, Laika, as she discusses her career from product photography, fashion, fine art, and so much more. Let's listen in and see what she has to tell us. Beautiful. Hello, everybody. I want to welcome our guest today, Elena. So I don't butcher your name, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing in your career. All right?
Yeah, hi Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me. This is really fun. My name is Elena Kulikova, and I'm a photographer in Los Angeles. My mom's calling me right now. She always has the worst timing.
It's all right. It's absolutely all right.
But yeah, I'm a photographer in LA. I've photographed a wide range of things. But I mostly, my bread and butter right now is product photography and beauty. Yeah, basically product and beauty. But yeah, did I forget something?
Nope,
Where I'm
you
from? Okay.
No, you hit it right on the nail. I really appreciate that. As you know, I've been following your work for at least 6 or 7 years, something like that. And as you can see behind me, for anyone who's watching this video, I have probably 100 cameras on a shelf behind me. I love.
More than I do.
Oh yeah, it's probably a problem. I should probably stop, but
No.
I'm not going to. It's but I love photography. I love your work, and your work is very inspirational. I absolutely appreciate you being here and discussing a bit about your career, about how you got involved, and we're kind of just gonna jump right into it. And I would love to know, based on, just your experience of how did you get involved in a creative career? How did you get started in the field of photography? What led you down this path?
Yeah. I think at heart, I've always been a creative. I grew up really poor in Russia, and my mom and I moved to America when I was 10 to California. And I, we were so poor, we didn't have food, we didn't have a lot of things. And one thing that I didn't really have was like dolls, and like I didn't really even have much time to play, really. Like I was like peeling potatoes and helping my grandma slaughter chickens and defeathering them and farming and stuff. But when I did have time to play, I would create dolls out of flowers. And then my mom gifted me her doll from, like, I think it was like the 30s or 40s, another doll that she was handed down. And it was ancient and I hated it because it didn't, I really wanted the Barbie. But I would still, like, I loved it because it was the only toy and doll I had, and I would sew clothing for it and, like, make worlds for it. And then I had ladybugs as pets, and I made like little worlds for them out of moss and things. So I think at heart I've always been creative, but that was definitely not a profession that was like allowed in the family. That's not realistic and it's not profitable. So I was very like, you know, like an A student that my mom always recalls, and studied biology and chemistry. And, like every immigrant child, my mom wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that,
Oh wow,
like
yeah.
this typical story. But I was very tall and lanky and like very slender. And so I started modeling when I was 18
Oh
to
wow.
help pay for things. And honestly, that's where I fell in love with photography, because I was just observing photographers and like really curious about lighting. And I always love asking questions. I love learning how things work. So I was asking questions, and then I actually fell in love with a photographer, and we started dating, and he gifted me a camera. And
Oh,
that's
that's
when,
amazing.
yeah, it was a Holga. It was a toy camera, but honestly, it was the best thing for me because um, it took multiple, you can take multiple exposures on it by not progressing the film forward. And that's when, and it was just an accident. And that's when I really fell in love with photography because I was like, you can combine worlds together. And it was just so magical to put like flowers on top of people's like heads and portraits like in the same frame and to see how they overlapped. And that's basically how it started. And I was just photographing abandoned things, like things I found on the street, and then some of my friends were models. So then I started photographing my friends, and then it just went went from there. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it just steamrolled once you went into the world of modeling. You fell in love with the camera. You fell in love with how to use the camera. You were able to get a hold of a camera and you discovered something by accident and it just blew your mind open to new possibilities. And
Yeah.
that's great. Absolutely. I was going to ask a little bit about your family. Thank you for sharing so much about your past. I know we've spoken about it before off of camera, but I appreciate you sharing that and that struggle that you went through. And I'm not going to pretend to understand what that was like, especially since you had so much to focus on as a child that was a little abnormal for most people in America. There are many people who have that experience, but um, I faced a little bit of that kind of touch and go with having enough food, having enough money to pay bills. But that was later in life. That was in teens, early 20s. It was not as a child, and I absolutely appreciate that you got to where you are, and I'm just glad that you're here with that artwork that you can express yourself with. And given what you grew up with, is your family supportive of what you're doing currently now that you're a little bit older, or because I was always lucky, no matter what happened, my parents supported me drawing, taking photos, creating art. They always were very like, "Hey, you're good at it. Please pursue it. Don't give it up." But how does that work for you and your family? If it's not too personal, I apologize if I went into
Oh,
something too far.
no, it's great. It's a great question. No, I mean, my mom is hilarious. She's basically it's me and her. This cat is like loves eating this my cat. Like I named her after a camera actually, Leica.
Hello, Leica.
But yeah, my mom is funny because I'm gonna be 40 next month,
Hmm.
and to this day, she'll still call me and she'll say like, my friend told me that librarians are like a big thing now, and you could get a stable job as a librarian, or like McDonald's is hiring a manager. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I love photography, and this is what I'm doing now. And I think she says those things because I've shared with her the struggle. It's been very difficult to get to where I am today. I've had, multiple jobs to try to get my photography career going. Photography gear and lighting and all of that equipment is extremely expensive. And yeah, it's taken a lot to get to where I am today. And so my mom is still always worried about me. Naturally, she's my mom, but it's funny because I think now I feel established, and as a freelancer, things come in waves for sure. And some months it's like crickets, and some months I'm like booked every single day. And it's just yeah, it's a journey, but yeah, I think my mom is proud of some of the accomplishments I've done as an artist and things I've done with photography, but she wasn't always supportive in it. Like, she worried about me a lot and me choosing an artistic career path. And I think honestly, she actually really wanted to be an artist. She's an amazing painter, but she never let herself do that. And yeah.
I understand that she wanted to have maybe she wanted to have that kind of life, and it was something that was frightening, especially with all that she had to deal with at that point in time. And
Right.
now she sees you pursuing that same life and is still worried about it. Especially, I mean, you're her daughter. Most parents are overly protective. I know I'm overly protective of my kid and all the, she wants to be a rock star, ballerina, stop motion animator. Like that, I don't know how all that's going to happen, but if she wants to pursue it, we'll do our best. But I understand it and I appreciate you sharing that. And it's always great to see where different people come from in their family relationships and it helps develop us as artists. It helps us grow, even if it's not from the most supportive point of view. There's still love behind that from the sounds of it.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this day and age, I think any career path you choose will be difficult because there are so many talented people, whether it's like a lawyer, a doctor, I mean, you name it, there are so many amazing people. And like you have to be really good at what you do. And I think in order to be really good at what you do, you have to be truly passionate about it from your heart. So I think the artistic path is definitely a very difficult one. It takes a lot of courage in your own personal like motivation and like it's a big part of you. So I think can be very personal at times. But I think if that's what you really want to do, you have to do it because otherwise, like I feel like you'll die inside. So I think whatever it is, you have to do it. And I think no matter what you do, there will be challenges for any route you go on, but you got to do it.
Oh, absolutely. You have to follow your heart. I tell my students all the time, you need to love what you do, and you need to make sure you have some kind of passion for it. And just I mean I got lucky. I knew what I was going to do from a young age. I looked at what I was capable of. I had a giant inflatable ego. I look at the ego as a big inflatable like burly muscle man on the beach trying to, and it just grows with every pump of the iron. The problem is that it can also be easily deflated, like inflatable furniture. Somebody pops it with a needle, it's going down. So when I was young, I had that inflated ego about I know I can do this, and I had the confidence to keep going. And you get deflated, you pop, and you have to rebuild it. It is personal. It is part of you, and it's just the same as if somebody sends you maybe a backhanded compliment and you get anxiety or you feel you're not good enough. We get imposter syndrome and it's that same thing. It's personal. You have to grow from it. You have to be able to take a hit and get back up and keep on moving. And I love the way you put it, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
and you did mention the double exposure stuff. I want to jump back to that. Double exposures, what kind of opened your mind? I'm personally exploring double exposures and long exposures now for the first time in my career, which is stuff I've been wanting to play with for 10 or 15 years. And you stumbled onto it and said, "Oh, I can figure out how to work with this. That's great." Is there a particular project and a particular set of skills you developed that you feel you're strong at? And did it relate to that project by chance?
To double exposures.
Double exposure or any project in general. I just know that double exposure is what was super interesting to me that opened
Yeah.
you up to the world of photography. So,
Yeah, double exposures blew my mind. Like I honestly didn't even want to take any single image photos, honestly, like when I really fell in love with it. And I think in that kind of like they weren't perfect always, and it was kind of tricky sometimes, like visualizing how the two images would be merged on film. And I started shooting on film, which was very difficult because I didn't know anything. And sometimes the film was completely blank and overexposed, and like, or just there was nothing on it because I didn't roll it onto the camera
mm,
correctly. So it was difficult. But then I think what I realized is I wanted to explore merging things together in the digital realm. So I started photographing digitally, and then I started like combining um, different textures or gradients or things that I would find, or even flowers, and combine it. And so I really fell in love with like these unique portraits or photographing, I think musicians mostly. Like I liked working with other artists who wanted something really weird and different. And so I got more into portrait photography. Um, but then honestly, I needed to make money, and artists don't always have the money to pay. So it was difficult because, I, being an artist myself, I totally understood that and was always willing to like, it's free, or like almost free. So I did other types of photography to support myself, like wedding photography, event photography, and so on and so forth. So it just kept kind of building. And I'm just self-taught, like I kind of just learned over time with each new thing that I wanted to try or attempt to do. So yeah, I don't know.
That, that's absolutely wonderful. That kind of leads into the bigger, deeper dive on that. You are self-taught. Did you go to college or school of any kind for something else? Some people didn't. I know some artists, it's all about that portfolio, so they just dived in when they were young and just started building. You just mentioned you were self-taught. Um, so we'll get that part out of the way. I feel like I stumbled over my question. Forgive me.
No, it was great. Yeah, so when I was 18, my mother is pretty intense, so I actually really wanted to go kind of far away and be free and to explore myself. I was pretty brave, I guess, like at 18, but I basically just applied to schools to Scotland and like as far away as I could possibly go. And I got a scholarship to a school in Canada near Vancouver. And I was studying biology, and I really loved biology. I was great at math and I loved chemistry, but biology was like organic and it was like observing nature. And now that I think back on it, I think I was already like kind of practicing my eye and like finding things. Like I loved looking at things under the microscope, and and like taking notes and observing things. But I was modeling on the side, and that's when I fell in love with photography. So I only did one school of 1 year of biology, and then I actually decided to move to LA, and try to model here. It didn't really work out. I didn't know anyone, so I moved around a lot, and then I moved back to LA 8 years ago again, and it's been really great. But during the time, different places that I moved, I guess I mostly Googled things and like just tried to learn things on YouTube. Um, or as a model, I actually observed a lot of other photographers and how they did things, and everyone is so different. And then I started assisting photographers, and that was amazing. I assisted some really incredible photographers that I learned a lot from. And then when I moved to LA in 2016, I I had always, I think, dreamed of having that like art school experience. And working full time, I couldn't really go to school full time. So I took night classes at Art Center, and I took the classes that I felt like would help me grow. And they were like video editing, After Effects, design, graphic design. Some like I took various courses, but I think I've always like longed for that experience, and being on the premise of this school, it was really beautiful to see other students, and I kind of had this like little like moments of jealousy, like just wishing that I was their age, having that experience that full, 4 or more years. But anyway, I love the path that I've been on, and it's been great, and I wouldn't change anything. It's been fun.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like it's a very good journey. And if it makes you feel any better, I went to college, got a 2 year degree, had to go back to college because everything changed from 2002 when I'm aging myself, at 2002 when I got out of high school and went in for
Oh,
fine
we're the
art.
same
And
age.
oh, yeah, there we go. I mean, we're not far off. Maybe a
2003.
couple of months apart at that point. And happy early birthday whenever this recording is and how far away your birthday is.
Thanks. It's in February.
Oh, wow, it's really close
Yeah.
to the time of this recording. In that case, huzzah, happy birthday. You made it. Congratulations. But I kind of relate to that path because I had to go back in 2012, 2011 to
Mm.
go update my knowledge on all the graphic design stuff I've done, all the fine art stuff I've done. The programs changed so much from what I was using in 2000, 2001, and 2
Yeah.
to what they are now, which is these robust beasts you need supercomputers to run. And it's fascinating. And with all of those skills that you built on, whether it's the School of Life or attending night classes, do you feel there's a set of skills you're strongest at as a photographer that really benefit you?
Yeah, I think if people were to describe, I think my strongest, like basically my strongest, what's the word? Asset, I guess you said.
Asset, yeah, that would probably be a good way to put it.
I think people would say it's lighting,
Oh,
which I've
interesting.
definitely worked on a lot, but I also feel like I have a lot to grow in. Like I want to, I really want to know everything about lighting. I want to be like super knowledgeable in it. And there are like a lot of challenging things sometimes in photography, especially with small product photography, which can have like gold or reflections and things like that. Things can be kind of tricky to light or to photograph, and I've learned a lot, but I have still, I think, so much that I want to perfect and to know. I think another part is like um, being a model. I feel like I've been on different sides of the photography world, not just modeling, but I've also been a full-time art director in the past, and I've assisted, and I've also styled, like prop styling, and so I have a lot of different um, skill sets, and where like usually it takes a team to create something really beautiful, like a campaign or something, and so I have the perspective of how things really come together, and I think I kind of have the mindset of a producer at times. Like I really like to get all the basic structure and the timing of everything down first, and then the creativity can come after. But I really like to organize things first and make sure everything is set, and then the creativity can come out.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. And with your, because you are doing freelance work, and I don't know the name of your business as a freelancer. Do you have a studio name that you go by, or is it just you as an individual?
Just me as an individual, like Elena Kulikova photography. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And when you are in situations where you're the creative director or the art director, are there any challenges with that going from just being on a product shoot that maybe only involves one or two crew members to suddenly something that maybe expands a little bit? Maybe you now have 8 people working with you. Are there any challenges going from photographer mode to art director mode or creative director mode?
Yeah, I had a full-time position in-house as an art director, and part of that was like hiring the right people for different jobs. And I think, I don't know, I'm kind of a perfectionist, but at times I kind of had the feeling of like I wanted to do it all. Like I wanted to be the photographer and the stylist and, everything. And sometimes you just have to relinquish certain jobs for people. And I think that's what makes a great art director, maybe, is like they know who the right person is for the right job. Um, but yeah, it's whether it's like a small team or a large team. I think I don't know where I'm going with this. Like,
Oh, no problem.
I don't know, but yeah.
It's that for me, it's interesting you mentioned the ability to let go of a piece of the project. That's something I have a big problem with. I usually have in my life, and every video I tend to talk about, I've always had 3 jobs.
Mm,
As an adult, I don't think there was a time where I didn't have 3 jobs, and I tend to be as a freelancer. I'm usually the only one doing animation, graphic design, photography, whatever the job is for small, big clients.
mm,
I tend to have that issue of, and I know I've had friends work with me at like gallery events where I'm setting up gallery stuff and they're like, "Hey, give me a task." I'm like, "Well, go do that thing over there." And then suddenly I'm standing next to them. They're like, "Go, get out of here. Go. Shoo, you gave me this task." And it's tough when you have the vision here, but you
Mhm.
don't have the time to execute every single step yourself. So breaking away is something I've had to learn as someone who's in charge of things myself. I understand that. I relate to that. And that is a big skill that people need to learn is delegation, which you and I seem to both have that same tie to. It's like, well, I know I want to do that, and I'm with you. I want to learn all those skills. Let's back up a little bit, talk about that lighting you were mentioning. I'm still very basic in lighting. No matter how much I study lighting, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm very good with small products. I can light a product. That's not a problem for me. But when it comes to studio lighting, I often still rely a lot on natural light because I love the way natural light looks. And I'm still getting familiar with the full color range of LED lights that can take literally any color within 256,000 color ranges and playing around with tungsten. I always find myself leading people over to that window, and I'm like, I got to stop that. I know my vision. I need to practice my lighting much more. And it just happens. I mean, I still have an issue with getting the right lighting for these videos and keeping a ring light out of my glasses, which is just I'm now that I see it, I'm never going to unsee it. But
Yeah.
uh, I get it, I understand it, and we're just constantly trying to create and grow as artists, and I relate to that. And with that part being said, as a professional photographer, we'll back away from all personal projects of this. Let's kind of talk about, do you have a favorite project that stands out to you? And if you do, can you share with us a little bit about your creative process on how you started that, how we got in maybe storyboarding or client discussion, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh God, I have a few and I don't even know where to begin. But as a personal art project, I've been raising butterflies and capturing them emerging like from the chrysalis and then setting them free. And so I've been like photographing a lot of time lapses, which take thousands and thousands, like I don't know, I'm like maybe I almost have 100,000 photos of butterflies at this point. But it's been a lot of work and it's beautiful. And like um, for that process, it starts with the butterfly, and then I find flowers for um, for the story of like them emerging. And I photograph them like sometimes the time lapse is multiple days, and sometimes it's like a day or sometimes a half a day when they emerge. Um, and then for something bigger, for a client project, this recent one comes to mind, and it was for a woman named Jane Jones, and um, she created amazing jewelry that is bold and like wild and really fun, and it's not like the typical dainty jewelry. It's really really amazing, and I don't really know anything about carats on diamonds, or I don't even know if I said that correctly, but they're like huge lab grown diamonds. They were just like, it was, I think some of the pieces were like tens of thousands of dollars. And
Oh,
like
wow.
yeah, to like um be in charge of like, basically she told me that she wanted, the photography to look very elegant and glamorous, but at the same time, it was this like kind of party that was very decadent, but very like youthful and kind of very free spirited. Where like, for example, like the girls were eating caviar, but drinking Pabst beer and with potato chips and stuff like that. So it's very like two different worlds kind of merging, and like
Hmm.
um anyway, it was really great. But so she had this concept, and so in order to bring it to life, we started thinking about like photographing it at a photo studio with the models, and like how many models would there be, how many makeup artists do we need per model, and hairstylists, and like wardrobe and props. And so you start thinking about like all the items you need and how it will be lit. And at first her mood board was kind of very shimmery, and like had a lot of sparkles and was more vibrant and kind of like cascading different colors. And I created mood boards and sent images of like lighting references back and forth so that we would figure that out. And it took a while, like I think all in all maybe like a month or two, basically back and forth on different things, like which models, which makeup artists, which hair, which lighting. And then we realized that we actually needed an actual location, and that bringing furniture, tables, and walls and things into a studio would be too crazy. And so then we photographed at a really beautiful home, and it was a 2-day shoot. And honestly, it was one of the coolest shoots I've done recently, because she was an amazing client. She trusted me and she gave me the freedom to create. And she was very respectful. Not everyone is like that. And also she was just very like free. Like she just kind of would sometimes would flow in the moment. And it could be really fun. I think it's really great to have a good structure, to have a plan going into something, but to have moments of freedom to kind of explore an image or try something new. And yeah, I feel like I was at an amazing decadent party with girls just having fun, and I was just capturing the moment. So it was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for walking us through that creative process to get to that point. And it's always great when you have a client who is open to your vision. They have an idea, but they're trusting you with that creativity. I know it can be a struggle sometimes because let's face it, the client is always right. That's the point. They're the one who has the idea. They're the one who wants something made, and if they can't produce it, they come to us to make that happen. And we need to meet their wants and needs. It's always great when we have this moment where it all works together perfectly, and
Yeah.
there's very few hiccups, if any. And I appreciate you sharing that. And with I just had it in my mind. It just slipped. This doesn't usually happen to me with my questions, but with that kind of a job versus your butterfly projects, it seems like you're tying in nature into a lot of your work. From what I've observed and seen on social media or seen in your portfolio, you love to tie nature back into a lot of projects when you can. Is that you bringing in a little bit of your love of biology, or is that just your appreciation of nature?
I think I mean, I love nature. It's just, I mean, without it, we'd be nowhere. And it's beautiful. But I think it does, like recently I've been observing, and I think it really does stem from like biology, and like, I don't know, like dissecting flowers, and like like showing like the pistils and all the little intricate like details. And I have this like super macro lens that is photographs things at 5 times the magnification. And like you can photograph like a tiny grain of sand. And I just love that world. I think like cells and like, I don't know, just seeing things on a small scale. I think it's just very inspiring to me, because it's incredible, because I feel like there are worlds within worlds. Like there are just so many tiny little things that are here, like making all of this like the bigger picture. And I think it's, I don't know, I just love all the little details.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to ask you about this macro work that you mentioned. I love macro work. I love the up close textures on trees, on peeling paint on the ground. Like you said, finding abandoned things early on. And I think it's like a stereotype now that photographers when we get started, we take pictures of road trips, signs, desolate objects, random abandoned things, trash. but I love the texture that comes out of it. The
Mhm.
relationship between something that's man-made, peeling off of wood that's a natural item. And do you get to play around with a lot of macro in your personal work and in your professional work?
Yeah, like when I have time, you know, like when I have some free time to explore things, I love gardening and growing flowers. And if something is like blooming and I have a free moment, I'll pick it and I'll be like, oh my God, I just want to like dive in and photograph one flower like really up close and get lost in the details. Um, and this past summer, I there was like a succulent that was growing and it had these little flowers that I mean, it was insane. Like when you photographed it up close, it was just like unreal because the actual flower is like this big.
Hmm.
And when you magnify it, like there's just all these little details that you can't really see with your naked eye. Um, so I definitely do photograph a lot of macro things like personally because it's just fun for me and it brings me a lot of joy. And then for commercially, I have noticed a lot of in the cosmetics and skincare world, a lot of brands are really liking macro textures now, like kind of on like for example, like on a lip gloss, like they're called, I think, doe foots, uh,
Hmm.
or just little things or like textures of like drips. Like that's very in right now for brands. And you know, things come and go as far as like what's popular, but that's definitely really up there right now. And I think my macro work, my personal macro work has helped get more commercial clients for that. Yeah, I know. And honestly, I think anytime I've noticed anytime I do any personal body of work, I've noticed that it's not always instant. It might not be that year or you know that month or maybe even in a couple of years, but it always somehow ends up making me money. And
Hmm.
I would strongly suggest to other artists to explore personal work all the time because you'll grow, you'll learn something, you might fall in love with something new, and I'm pretty sure down the line it will eventually make you money. So yeah, it's always good to work on personal projects.
Oh wow, that's great advice, and I appreciate that. And if you don't mind me diving a little deeper on macro product, macro shoots
Mhm.
in general, what kind of issue? How do you approach that? Because you're talking about sometimes you're taking pictures of small earrings or small flowers. How do you approach that in shooting that? And then I'll actually ask a similar question about the portraits you've shot. So,
Uh, um, I don't know. Sometimes macro things are definitely tricky because focus can be very shallow with small objects. So I've learned to focus stack, like to photograph things on a tripod and focus for different parts of things, and then focus stack that basically in post to kind of put all the images together.
and
Um,
this is all digital, correct? So you
yeah.
can take multiple focus, so you can use depth of field and you can
Yeah.
focus on different points of the small object, whether
Mhm.
it's organic or something man-made. And then
Mhm.
together in post, when you combine all of those, it
Mhm.
will equal out to the sharp shot you're looking for. Is that correct?
Yeah, you kind of have to like delete the layers that are not in focus and then put the layers that are in focus. So it's kind of like you're literally stacking like, you know, six or more images together and then you're kind of like combining the points that you want the focus to be on. Um, and yeah, it can be tricky, but you know, especially with lighting sometimes too, when like literally the lens is like up against something um, that can be difficult with lighting sometimes. But you know, I've learned like trying to tackle that with different lights. Um, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
that's excellent. Thank you very much. And again, it all comes down to lighting for any photography, because what is photography without light? And the style of lighting, the color of lighting really changes the mood and the emotion with it. So I definitely understand that, especially on the macro level. Everything is affected differently when you're talking about that small scale. The amount of light definitely changes uh, the way we perceive the textures, the shadows, etc. So I
Mm.
appreciate you sharing that. Let's kind of dive into what inspires you as an artist. What do you think right now as an artist? What's inspiring you to create or to tackle a project?
Yeah, music is important for me. I love listening to music that brings me inspiration, especially when I'm like getting equipment set up. Sometimes on the day of, like when I'm actually really trying to focus, and there are a lot of people who I might be talking to, like the prop stylist or the model or the art director or the client, I kind of sometimes don't won't automatically play music. I think usually there is music on set for other people, but sometimes I kind of just tune it out because I'm really, I guess I kind of stress a little bit, and it's like, at the end of the day when like a client is hiring me and a prop stylist and all the models and the makeup artists and you name it, like at the end of the day they're actually spending, my portion of the day rate might be kind of small or normal or whatever, but for them they're spending a lot of money, on that day. And so I hold a lot of the stress because I feel like at the end of the day, things come down to me as far as like the final image looking good. So I get a little stressed sometimes, but I try to manage it. And it's been a learning process to like kind of just calmly, I think it's with confidence that I've learned like what I'm doing and what's expected. And so it just flows naturally because I've done it so
Mhm.
many times. But I already forgot the question.
Oh, you're talking about your inspirations,
Yeah.
and it led into a very good tangent. Let's run with it by all
I,
means.
I
Um,
totally went off the tracks. But yeah, music, I mean, films inspire me. I love watching movies. I love going to the museum, going to the park. I think going out into nature, going camping or hiking. I think that's very important for the mind and the spirit, and like just kind of getting lost, and obviously friends and other artists too, of course, other photographers.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And is there, speaking of other photographers, is there a artist or photographer that you find inspirational that people should maybe know about, that you're like, oh, I would sing their praises? And for me, it's pretty much anybody I interview. If I'm interviewing someone, it's because I want to talk to them. I find them inspirational, and I'm sharing them. Personal inspirations are always from any random set of places. So hopefully you can draw from many directions, as you already mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first encountered Ellen von Unwerth's work, when I was 19, I think. And her photography, I bought a book, which I still have, and it's one of my favorite photo books. But she's photographed a lot of campaigns, and she's really renowned. She's amazing. But her work is just very like bold and sassy and like very unapologetic and sexy, and just she just like goes out there. And for me at the time, I had never seen anything like that, so it just was like inspiring and empowering, especially her being a female photographer. I was just like, oh my God, she can do this. And because it looks fun, all her work is just super playful. And so I was like, I want to do that. Another photographer, at the time, I think I discovered his work when I was 20. He's an Italian photographer named Guido Macafico. And he's like, I guess, a product photographer, but his work is so unique. And I remember he photographed mold on bread, and and he photographs like snakes and things, and he works for huge brands like Gucci and Prada, and like it's very like, I think a lot of it has elements of nature, like bugs or jellyfish or snakes or like mold on bread. But his work is very bold and very different, and his lighting is superb. He's a very talented photographer. And I just remember when I saw it, I was like, what? Like he's photographing mold, but it looks so good. And he's amazing. And then I assisted Craig McDean um, in Paris for several years in my mid 20s, and I learned a lot from him. And he's an amazing photographer. I worked on like Dior campaigns and Vogue and like different magazines with him, and he's brilliant and he's so kind. And I think as a model, I wasn't always treated very respectfully by photographers, and not all photographers, but I mean, I guess not all people are kind, but it was really beautiful to watch him work. And I learned a lot from him, and I really appreciate like the times that I worked for him and learned from him. And his work is brilliant, amazing photographer. And then another cool thing is he actually assisted Nick Knight, which I actually think is like the god of modern fashion photography. And like, he's just amazing. He's photographed, I think everyone famous, like he's brilliant. So anyway.
Absolutely. No, that is great. Thank you so much. I have so much to look into. Some of these names I have not heard of, so I look forward to exploring them a little bit more, which is always my downfall. I follow like 10,000 people on social media and I can never keep track of anybody, but it's great to explore their work and their lives and see what they've put out into the world. And thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, you definitely have this big contrast between modeling and photography. You don't miss modeling, do you? That's not something that ever comes back into your mind. You prefer the photography world. And I know, again, if this is too personal, I apologize by
Um,
all means.
yeah, no, I honestly really don't really miss it at all. It I don't know, especially I think the model industry has changed a lot.
Mm,
It's healthier in many regards now. Like when I was 20 years ago,
mm,
you weren't allowed to have piercings, you weren't allowed to, you know, have tattoos. Like that was just crazy. And also you had to be very slender, like anorexic basically. And my agent at the time was constantly telling me to lose weight. And on most shoots, like I just felt like an inanimate object. Like people kind of just were like, here, put this on,
mhm,
kind of
mhm.
throw you around and not like really respect you. And now I feel like the industry and people have just kind of changed and evolved, and now there's plus size models and there are other types of models, and definitely more skincare, not skincare, but awareness to skin color, and just a broader appreciation and welcoming of all types of people, which is really great. I'm so
Mhm.
happy that that's happened, and I think it's just humanity evolving. And people are just kinder on set. Like you don't have someone screaming at you. That's not acceptable nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I don't really miss modeling, but ironically, recently I've been photographing. Well, I've noticed clients requesting more older women and
Hmm.
women who aren't basically 18, 19, because those are kind of the typical model ranges, like
Mm.
early 20s, but like women in their 30s and 40s. And I've seen more of that. And then this past year with the pandemic and everything has been pretty challenging. So I actually decided to kind of submit my photos to some local talent agencies, because I was like, maybe this will help me meet other new creatives and help me like bring in a few, like extra bonus things to help, with life. And it's definitely not like my goal or anything, but it's been a great little side income. And I don't I don't see myself as a model, and I don't
Mhm.
really, want to do that. But it's just fun. Sometimes, honestly, it's been with like people I know or things like that, and yeah, it's cool.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you brought up how you see the industry changing and it is more humanized
Yeah,
and it is less of a, a struggle to work in that industry. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's not, and I'm glad to hear it because I know as a photographer and the photographers I know, we we go out of our way to make sure comfort and safety of the model is it's primary. If they're
same.
not happy and comfortable, you're going to end up with garbage on film. So
Yeah.
anytime I hear stuff about agents from the past or bad photographers just tossing you around like you're an inanimate object, it gives you a weird pit in your stomach.
I
And I
know.
know you know what I mean as a photographer. You're like, well, these are humans. These aren't props.
Right.
So
Yeah, I could never imagine treating another model like that or just another human. I always want to make sure that they're fed, that they're not hungry, that they're not cold, that they're comfortable, that they're okay with the image we're creating. It's very important to me.
absolutely. And kind of bouncing back into photography off of that, have you, I know you've mentioned that you faced a few ups and downs and struggles. Is there any particular struggle that you want to talk about, maybe with younger individuals who are trying to find their creative path, maybe in photography, maybe in some other venue? Do you have any words of advice? Is there a struggle they should be aware of that you're just going to have to work through it, or something along those lines. Maybe even if it's just supportive words of how they should find their creative path.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I didn't know that I would land in the path that I'm currently on. It was just kind of like a discovery of like meandering and trying to follow, honestly, most of the time finances. Like, okay, I'll do this for money and
Uh,
I'll do this, and kind of figuring out what stuck, what I loved, and what was easy, for me. Um, but I would say that for other artists, just explore everything you can, because the other thing is, at times I thought I would be a prop stylist or a fashion designer, and you kind of never know what will land. So I think trying to do as much as you can to see what really brings you a lot of joy, and to talk to other fellow artists and pick their brain of like what their struggles are, or how they've found success, will help you kind of grow. And just having a good network of artists to just talk to, I think, is very important. um, and through my path, like, um, I've definitely been burned a few times by
mm,
tricky clients, some difficult people. You're just bound to meet them, on your path. Many have been amazing, obviously, but the ones that really hurt you, you remember them because you learn from those experiences. And I would just say, to protect yourself. It's hard to say things sometimes to a younger self, because I think I would still make the same mistakes because I was young, I was naive, and I didn't have the experience. And when you get burned, that's when you learn. Like, I think for a young child, like, the parent can tell them like that oven is hot, don't touch it. But until
mm.
you touch it and you actually know what the pain is, and you know like how not to burn yourself accidentally. So you'll just kind of learn from the process. But I would say definitely, as to other artists, protect yourself. Make sure you answer all the questions, or ask all the questions. Like, if you're uncertain about something, ask, don't be scared. um just make sure that you feel comfortable with everything. And yeah.
Oh, that's stupendous. I couldn't have said any of that better myself as a college instructor. I appreciate that. And as an artist, I appreciate some insights I'm taking away from that. One last question, and then we will. We're running low on time. I promised you about an hour for this. And one last question is, where do you hope to see your career path in the next maybe 5 or 10 years? Do you have a certain vision?
Yeah, there have been a few bodies of work that I've been working on as books, and it's taken a lot of time. I know, I'm so
I,
excited.
I'm going to interrupt and say, I love photo books. I
Uh,
don't. You can't see all my shelves if you're watching the video of this and not just listening to the recording. But I have art books galore, covering shelves, and I can't pretend that I've made it through each and every one of them yet because I have hundreds of them. But
Takes
I'm
time.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, sometimes I buy art books too, and then they just sit there. Like I don't actually look through them. And I imagine like, one day this next weekend when I have free time, but like free time is made a weird term and you have to make the time for things that you want to do. Um, but yeah, there are a few bodies of works that different subjects that I've been working on for a while now, for multiple years, and some are more advanced than others. Um, but I basically have to invest the time in finishing those bodies of work, and then I'll edit it down, trim it, and then start to put it together. And some of the books, like, I don't want to give away my
Nope.
secrets, but I've never seen it done before, the things that I'm thinking of, and some are more complicated, some are kind of the more traditional photo books. But basically, for the next 5 years, I really want to um, invest more of my time and finances into to finishing them. I think photo books are works of passion. They're very expensive. They're not, it's not something that you're probably going to make money from. Like usually it's just kind of like a lot of money invested into it, but or so I've heard from other photographers and other artists.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, thank you for
Um,
telling me that.
Well, I mean, I think if it really takes off, or if it leads obviously to other things, but I just heard that especially for a high quality book, it's just very expensive. And what happens is if, quality is very important to you, making the book is very expensive. And then if you're looking to make profit from it, that's highly unlikely because it's just who's going to buy like a photo book that's very expensive. So you think of like low profits, but then thinking about like the years of work that I've put into something, I probably won't be making much money, but it's just something I have to do. So I'm going to finish. I think it's like 4 books that are very different that I'm working on. And I don't know when the timing, but I'm hoping the next 5 years, hoping one for this year. And apart from that, I would just love to work with bigger brands because the finances from bigger commercial projects help me. I invested back into my art. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for what you've shared today. Again, we're running low on time. I want to let you go. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate your work. I appreciate you speaking with me. And I look forward to seeing what you create next and put out into the world and appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you, Jeremy. It's been really fun. It's
Absolutely.
great.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, 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 it's great. I love it.
Wonderful. I appreciate this time and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Me too. Thanks.
Take care.
Okay, bye.